You better connect your air hose. Mike will be pissed. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to review the complete and total and utter blatant ripoff of Ridley Scott's Alien by the name of Creature, also known as The Titan Find. I think, from what I understand, The Titan Find might have been the writer/director's title, and then probably the studio or distributor or something renamed it to the one-word title Creature, much like the one-word title for Alien. It's very similar. I mean, you've got creature to describe something and alien to describe something. So what's interesting about this movie is, even though it's a blatant kind of a ripoff of Ridley Scott's Alien, at least the original title wasn't so much of a ripoff of the title of Alien. And then, I would imagine the powers that be changed the title to more resemble a title that rips off even the title of Alien. You've got Alien and then you've got Creature. And to be fair, the word creature is actually said a couple times in the movie, so I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. I didn't know until recently that this movie was originally titled The Titan Find, which, to be honest, the only thing really going for that title is at least it's not a ripoff of, a one-word descriptive title that's very similar to the title Alien. So The Titan Find really isn't that great of a title in itself. So as well, even though this movie was originally known as, or intended to probably be called The Titan Find, obviously I think Creature ultimately is kind of a better title, and the title I've known this movie by for the 20 years or whatever, 20 plus years it's been a part of my life. I originally saw this movie back in either the late 90s or early 2000s. Me and a buddy rented it, probably a tape much like this, from a video store back when they were still renting VHS. This is the original Media 1985 Media Home Entertainment VHS version I got from a video store subsequently. Incidentally, I still really like the cover of the Media release. I don't know if they would have put this out on Laserdisc as well, I would imagine, but I did see this title, this cover in the video stores in the 80s when I was growing up and stuff, and I remember in the sci-fi section, I remember seeing this artwork here with this guy. It looks like the guy has some kind of a glove on with some spikes, and it always looked like to me like he was being stabbed from behind by the other guy. Which is not what's happening at all in this scene, but it looks like, if you look close at this, it looks like he's got spikes protruding like Wolverine or something from his spacesuit glove, and like he's stabbing that guy in the chest. So this, as a kid, I looked at the back of this and I'm like, oh my god, that's scary. So I wouldn't actually see this as a kid. I kind of wish, in retrospect, I would have, grown up with this movie. But alas, I grew older with it when I saw it when I was in my early 20s or whatever. And when me and my buddy rented it and watched it, we had a laugh of it. We loved renting just bad movies, bad horror movies, bad sci-fi movies, and just laughing at them and stuff. And this movie, ever since I saw it with him at that time, just left this indelible impression on me. And I just recently did a video called something like, Nate's 5 titles that are overdue for Blu-ray release, and like a genius, before I did that video, I didn't really do my research. I did my research while I was editing, so it didn't occur to me. Creature was one of the titles, this movie Creature was one of the titles I thought was just long overdue for Blu-ray release, in particular because it was shot in Panavision. And from what I understand, in North America, we'd never really had an official widescreen version of this movie. Of course, after I did my video, I was editing it and researching it, and I came to find out that there was, in fact, a DVD that had been put out, which was widescreen, and it actually featured the original title, The Titan Find, and it featured extra footage and stuff, like an uncut version where it had extra footage. It was it was kind of an extended version. I don't know exactly how much longer it is, not a whole hell of a lot longer, but I was really surprised to find that. And then they say, oh, that DVD is long out of print and is going for a lot of money. And then I found this on Amazon, which is touted as, obviously widescreen and Creature DVD, and I'm like, it was like $5.99 I think, and I'm like, you know what, I looked at the reviews and stuff, and the people did say in fact that it is widescreen, it looks pretty good, and it is the uncut version, with the extended scenes and stuff that weren't featured on the original, media VHS version and stuff. So the only thing about this particular release that's not as good as I guess the release that maybe came before it is that release may have had special features and stuff, whereas this $5.99 one on Amazon is nothing but movie only. And so first I'll talk about the movie, and then I'll briefly talk about this DVD release. As I said, Creature is a complete and total and utter blatant ripoff of Alien. It starts on this, this moon of, Saturn or something like that. I don't know if it's called Titan or something like that, where these two guys, it's so funny the relationship between these two guys. They're like doing some, they're exploring this moon and exploring all these alien artifacts and stuff, and it's so funny, it's almost like they're a gay couple or something, that they come across as just an old married gay couple or something, that these guys, these two astronauts, are like seemingly all by themselves on this moon, just rummaging around through this alien artifacts and stuff. And it's just so weird how it's just so just casual and nonchalant and almost boring. But I do want to say that when I rip on this movie and make fun of it and stuff, I'm doing it out of complete and total love and admiration for this absolutely schlock piece of crap. There's something about this movie that I just absolutely love. I've actually watched this DVD that I recently got, the widescreen version. I'm so thrilled to have it widescreen and like uncut and stuff. I watched it twice already. And there's always been something about this movie since I first saw it that's just like, oh my god, it's like it's just one of the best examples of bad movie. But anyway, these guys are they just seem so bored. They're on this moon, they're looking around through this alien, artifact junk, I should say, and this one guy finds this canister, the specimen canister. I don't think they know it's a specimen canister at the time, and they take it down and put it on the ground, dust it off, look at it, and the guy looks at it with a flashlight, and you can see this just rubber kind of alien face. It's kind of a half-ass rip-off of the H.R. Geiger design and from Alien, of course. And it's just like he shines his light on it, and you just see the rubber mouth go like, it doesn't make a sound, but the mouth opens, and the guy's like, "Oh Jesus Christ!" and drops the flashlight on it, cracking it because it's like a glass. It's got a window where you can see the specimen in there, and the other guy's like, "Oh, you cracked it there when you dropped your light there." And he's like, the other guy's like, "Oh, geez." And he's like, "I want to take a picture." And he's like, "How's this?" The guy stands behind it. He's like, "I can't get both of you in. Why don't you sit on it?" And he's like, "You sit on it." And this is what I mean. It's like they're old married gay couple or something. They're just always, bickering and quarreling and stuff. And the guy forces the other guy to sit on it. "Would you sit down on it? I have to take a picture and I need you for scale." And the spaceman sits down on it, and he's like, "Maybe you should be, maybe I should be taking the picture, and you should be." And he's like, the guy at the camera's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, And then what's really kind of cool about this movie is some of the the limited gore effects I do like, where this guy's like, "Oh," and then inside of the spacesuit, blood goes. Like it's almost, I don't know, like there's almost hoses above here, so like it drains down or splats inside the visor and stuff. And the sound design for this movie when people get killed and splatted and stuff, I really do like. So this guy's like this, and all of a sudden the visor, the glass part of his, helmet turns all bloody, and just like, and the other guy's like, "Oh my god!" And the camera just pans up, and you hear this creature sound, and then it's the opening credits, and it's so. This movie is just the biggest Alien ripoff. It's even doing like the alien or the pan across space, but I think in an effort to not completely rip off Alien, instead of going this way like Alien did, it's like going the other way. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to try my best not to do a beat by beat, but after this we see some space station orbiting the moon of Earth. I don't know what it's called, Concord or something like that. I don't know what that might be it or whatever. And we see this stuff going on in there, this guy doing this, and I can't even express how awesome it is to finally have, even though it is on DVD, to finally have a widescreen and uncut at that version, to be able to see widescreen the whole frame, of course, because up until now I just had pan and scan versions. And there's a little bit of, if you're used to the video version or VHS version or whatever, there's some extra dialogue at the beginning of this scene where the guys in the space station, that's orbiting the moon of Earth or whatever, are just doing this and that, and one of the guys sees like the spaceship that's coming back from that expedition on Titan, which is a moon of Saturn or some crap, I don't know. Don't hold me on all the details. Coming back, and it's just at breakneck speed, and it's like, this thing's gonna collide with us in 45 seconds or something, and it's like condition red, and it's like they're so nonchalant even though they're gonna die in less than a minute. It's like, I just can't believe it. It's like, oh, then I got a visual here, and there's this shot of this spaceman who's like going, and flashy lights, and he's all like nasty looking zombie face inside the space helmet. It's like, and smoke, and the guy's like, that's an image they're getting from this ship that's returning from Titan that's gonna hit him in less than a minute, 40 seconds or so. And he's like, what the hell? And all of a sudden it's like, holy shit! And the thing just hits the space station and blows the whole thing up, and it's just the most, oh my god, it's just the most ridiculous thing. Like, we've got this spaceship that's on a collision course with us, and we're gonna all die and be exploded in less than a minute, but turn on the condition red, turn on the alarm just for the hell of it, in case, just, oh my god. I mean, if you're gonna die in less than a minute, just forget the alarm. You don't even need it. And it's just like, and even after, I mean, I guess to be fair, as they don't necessarily know they're all gonna die or whatever, but it's just like, oh my god, this movie is just awesome. So the next scene is a shot of the spaceship, heading out, and I guess in a few seconds later we find out that through a briefing in this spaceship, these are the characters we spend the rest of the movie with. We find out a few moments later from a briefing from Ferris Bueller's dad that this guy is like the head honcho on the ship, the company man. Oh, by the way, this movie is kind of based on like two rival companies, NTI, American's company, and Richter Dynamics out of Germany, who are, at head-to-head whatever. I mean, does it say it? No, it doesn't say it on there. There's some spiel at the beginning of the movie that says, these two companies that are head-to-head and a space race and battle for, supremacy of conquering space or some crap, I don't know, I don't remember, but that's a big kind of a plot point about this movie, is the American NTI company versus the German Richter Dynamics, who are basically on this race to find and plunder and pillage this, this moon of Saturn or whatever, Titan, and all the alien artifacts or whatever. So this company guy, Ferris Bueller's dad, it's so funny because you could do like a cut of this maybe where you blend this with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and instead of showing the Ferris Bueller's dad stuff at his office, you could show him like in the space doing this space stuff. That'd be kind of funny to do a fan cut of combining Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Creature or whatever. But this guy who plays Ferris Bueller's dad is the company man, head honcho, and you've got the chick from Inner Space who's the cashier, and she was also one of the renters in Batteries Not Included, one of the renters in the the lowbrow apartment or whatever. This Wendy, who I don't know how to pronounce her last name, was a face from the mid to late 80s that we saw a decent amount of and stuff like that. She's great in this movie. We've got Ferris Bueller's dad, the woman who would go on to be the crazy sister in People Under the Stairs, and I don't think anyone else in the crew of characters who you spend the majority of the movie with I necessarily can recognize from any other movie. But this briefing will both brief the characters, the crew of this, I can't even remember the name of the American spaceship. I don't know if it has one. I would imagine it does. The crew of this spaceship, they brief the crew and also let the audience in on it. But basically they know from, I don't know, I guess because they sent this ship to Titan and it came back with possessed spacemen that did a kamikaze in the frickin' space station or whatever. They know that there's something that we want on that moon of Saturn or whatever in Titan, so we're going to go back and they want to claim this archaeological site and of alien origin to ourselves, and whatever. It's just this kind of thing where this company man wants to just take this alien stuff, artifacts, or maybe could use the stuff to learn how to make weapons or whatever for the company or whatever. So, you know, then it's this big race between them and the Richter dynamics from Germany and stuff to go basically pillage all these alien artifacts on this moon, basically. I think the writer slash director of this movie was a pretty big like sci-fi fan and stuff. There's a couple references of like, there's a reference of like Forbidden Planet, a line from Forbidden Planet, and later on there's a reference of the movie The Thing from Another World, and you know, zapping the creature with a grid, you know, electrocuting the creature by putting a grid on the floor, kind of a thing. And early on in the movie, when we are introduced to this, you know, this Beth character, and Mike is the captain of the ship, even though the company guy's in, you know, command of him basically. And she's reading this book and they're playing chess, and you know, she references a line from Forbidden Planet where, after all, a commander doesn't have to have any brains, just a big strong voice. And there's just this, me and my buddy laughed at this, and then there's just this random scene where the captain looks down at this desk and goes, "Oh, I guess Susan's been here," and sees this half-eaten sandwich, and it's just like, where did that come from as the movie maker? Like, is that in the script, or is it like, was someone from catering in the movie set didn't finish the sandwich, so they throw it into the movie, make it a part of the plot? I mean, when you're, you know, when they were writing it, they're like, okay, Captain looks down, grabs a half-eaten sandwich, and says, "So it looks like Susan's been here." It's just the most random frickin' line ever. It's just, oh my gosh, this is why I love this movie. It's just like, it's kind of, you can tell it's kind of passionate about what it wants to do, like completely and utterly and blatantly rip off Alien, but at the same time it's absolutely ridiculous. I love it. So this woman who would go on to be the crazy sister in People Under the Stairs plays the security officer who's basically, you know, I don't know, company security officer by the name of Bryce, this, you know, Rambo woman with the gun or whatever, that's basically under the direct command of the Ferris Bueller's dad. And early on in the movie, like 11 minutes, we see this woman, you know, basically stealing all of the doctor's, the medical woman's drugs and sedatives from, you know, she's just like, this movie is so ridiculous. It's like, you have no permission to take these. These are prescription drugs. And this woman doesn't say a word. She takes them, and this French chick who's, you know, screwing this other guy on this on the ship comes in and says, "What did you want with all those?" It's drugs, sedatives mostly. "What did she want those for?" And anyway, then the boyfriend comes in the extended version. I think in the other version they just cut to the scene where, you know, the boyfriend takes this French chick with this very, very 80s, mid-80s hairdo, and you know, I don't know, this woman could potentially be sexy, but that hairdo just doesn't do anything for me. It's just like, oh my gosh. Takes this woman into this part of the ship where there's this big window and they can see like the moon as they approach Titan or whatever, and the guy's getting all whimsical about, you know, "Oh, sometimes I sleep up here. It's like, you know, sleeping on the back porch on an August night," and she's all getting all like, "I don't like it. It's hard to talk about. Every time I look at it, I feel like I'm being smothered." And that's a line I think from, you know, Alien. I mean, about Kane being smothered, having a dream about being smothered. I think that's a rip-off from that line on Alien. And it's just like, all of a sudden she's like, "I don't think I'm coming back. I've got a bad feeling." And he's like, "Of course you are. What are you talking about?" And she's like, "I can feel it. Make love to me, please." And there's this little lame ass, and you don't really even see anything. You see her like naked and topless and stuff later on, but in this quote unquote lame ass sex scene that's like 13 minutes into the movie, just for no good reason, you don't really see much of anything at all, and it's just the most lame love scene, and you gotta love it. One thing that I do want to say that I do like about the movie, and I think is fairly competent, is the music. Like early on, or right when the movie starts, it's like I can't do it, but there's this horn that I like that it goes like dit. Unfortunately, you don't really hear this theme throughout the movie. It's just like an opening and closing credits kind of a situation. But the music is actually like, they've actually got some, you know, cues and tracks and stuff that are actually like, you know, kind of more or less full orchestral score and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that sounds a little bit like Alien, of course. And so, I mean, overall, I think in regards to the score aspect of this movie, like the score is relatively competent, and really kind of gets you, like the music when the movie starts, it really kind of gets you going and gets you prepared for what you're in for. Of course, the movie really doesn't live up to as good as the music is. I think the music is probably one of the more competent things about the movie. I mean, I guess some of the visual effects are kind of interesting, but I mean in a very, very lowbrow way, of course. And another thing this movie completely rips off from Alien, of course, is the landing scene, where it's just like almost shot for shot, almost verbatim from the Alien on, you know, the planet, and or the move of the landing in the movie. Oh, I can do this. The landing on the planet in the movie Alien, when they go down and they're slowly going down and counting down and all this stuff. And in Alien, they land and like the landing gear like gets all caught up on some rocks or whatever, and creates this commotion, this hubbub where it's like Nero, 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 and this emergency, and they actually kind of damage the ship when they land in the, you know, in the movie Alien. Well, the exact same thing happens in this movie to a different degree. Like when they're, you know, in approach to landing, they can see if on the, you know, the imaging thing that the Richter Dynamics ship is already there and it's landed inside of this crater, and this commander, you know, Ferris Bueller Dad guy is just like, you know, just land down here, just come on, do it. And he's like, well, if the German commander landed in this, you know, in this crater, he had a damn good reason for it. And it's just like, I'm going to do a scan of the surface or whatever, and it's just like, you don't get it, do you, Davidson? Just sit down now. And this, you know, the guy, Ferris Bueller's dad, makes him sit down on this, you know, just weak ass platform or whatever, which as soon as they land, and it's like they feel like everything's all hunky and dory, it's like it's just like, and it falls through. And I don't know if it falls to, like, you know, the down into the crater the same distance as the, you know, onto the bottom of the crater, like right next to the, you know, the Richter Dynamics ship or whatever, but they don't really make that clear or not. But what I'm saying is that it's a complete and total rip-off of Alien once again, where, you know, there's like, the landing seems fine, and then there's all kinds of commotion and damage. And I think from what we're meant to understand, that the ship is basically, that they came and landed, you know, they came in and landed with, is basically rendered, you know, broken at that time. And I think from there on, their plan is to basically go and hopefully get a flight back from the Richter Dynamics crew and ship, which of course would be kind of a strange proposition, because they're, you know, they're rival companies or whatever. And it's just like, so after the crash, I don't think the Ferris Bueller dad even apologizes or is more, you know, remorseful or anything. It's just like, when the captain's like, yeah, let's go get help from Richter Dynamics, he's like, no, we're not helping them. We're not asking them for help we're not asking them for help for anything. And it's just like, what a jerk this Ferris Bueller's dad is. I mean, he gets him in this predicament, and then he's like, doesn't want to ask for help. Like, how does he expect to get back to planet Earth? Just freaking hitchhike? So earlier I talked about this French chick with the, you know, mid to late 80s hairstyle that I don't really like, and her boyfriend is this guy named John. And I actually like the guy who plays, I don't know if I've seen him in anything else or not, but regardless, I like the guy who plays John in this movie. He's got this really dry, almost like he's in a comedy sensibility about him. Like, he just plays everything straight, but he's got this, it just seems like he's playing it for laughs in a weird way. It's just really, really, really weird, the character of John. It's almost like the actor is almost, it feels like he's like reluctantly doing this part, or wants to be a serious actor, but he's relegated to, he ended up in this movie. And I don't know, there's something about his presence in the movie and the way he comes across that's just so, it's either reluctance or just playing it straight for laughs. It's just the weirdest, it just comes across so weird. But because of the weirdness of this guy, the subtle weirdity, or at least in my opinion, it's just he just makes the scenes that he's in just so much more entertaining. Like, you know, of course, what happens next is they go over to the Richter Dynamics ship to look for help or whatever, and it's the same thing, once again, ripping off Alien. Instead of going into the derelict ship, you know, you just replace in Creature with the derelict, you know, space jockey ship from Alien with the Richter Dynamics ship. It's still like a rip-off of Alien, even though, you know, they're trekking across, going into this other ship, and of course it's all dark and deserted and stuff. And his girlfriend, French girlfriend chick, is looking in this specimen container, and she's saying this and that and whatever, and the guy's like, John's like, that's all we need is another mystery. So basically when they go into the Richter Dynamics ship, of course, after a little bit of looking around, I think the French chick ends up finding bodies and stuff in this one room where the specimen container is, and she comes out screaming, and they try to escape, and she gets trapped in there, and the creature, it's kind of cool because, you know, for the majority of the movie when you see the creature, of course, it's shrouded in shadows and darkness and stuff, which is, you know, the best case scenario for a movie like this, especially with the budget and stuff. You know, I will admit the creature, you know, the way they do it is, you know, where they barely see it and just hear it and stuff is, you know, kind of creepy to a certain extent and stuff, but the French chick with the bad hair ends up being, you know, killed, and I kind of like the way they do kills and stuff in this movie when they do happen. Like she was, you just see the kind of this point of view of the creature come at her, and then you just see like blood splat on the window through the door. The door closed and she was trapped on the other side, and the rest of the people were trapped on the safe side, so the blood just splats all over the you know, basically the window of the door, and the guy, you know, her boyfriend or lover or whatever is like, ah. And that's the scene what's going on right here. It's like the guy's going all crazy because his girlfriend was just killed and they're trying to sedate him, and at that point, you know, Bryce comes, that, you know, it's almost like Bryce had foreknowledge of what was going to happen, and she took all the tranquilizers so she'd have it ready for this moment where she injects John with some tranquilizer. And what's so funny is usually tranquilizer, you know, from what I've seen when shooting, you know, animals and stuff and hunting shows or whatever crap, you know, they'll just drop an animal and it'll just be like asleep or whatever. In this movie, when they tranquilize John, he's like, but then they're like, see if you can get him on his feet, and then he's just like, he's just standing up by himself, but he's like, so it's like, is he tranquilized or is he not? I mean, it's like half tranquilized. It's like his head is tranquilized and the rest of his body is fine because he's standing up on his own. It's just so stupid. But at that time, we find out, you know, Bryce speaks, and she's like, it's okay, it's just a tranquilizer. And anyway, they take John in shock or whatever, and they go back to their ship, and it's just like, oh, what happened, you know, where's Susan, what happened to John? And it's just like, well, there's not much help that they can find on the Richter Dynamics ship, or at least not yet. It's so funny, even though I just seen this twice recently, and the last time I watched it last night, I don't really remember, like, when they come back from the Richter Dynamics ship and with John and stuff, and I don't really remember what they're talking about or what their plan is, you know, to try to get the hell out of there at this point. I think they're just doing this or that or whatever, and that's the scene where, of course, Klaus Kinski has a really small part in this movie, probably about somewhere in the middle of the movie or whatever. He is the last remaining Richter Dynamics crew member, and I gotta say, when he shows up, I mean, I don't think I've really seen him in anything else necessarily, but you know, just I don't know, it's just kind of cool to have an actual, like, German in this movie or whatever. So, I mean, you don't really have to have seen him in anything else to just appreciate his presence in this movie. He kind of lifts it up, and just whenever he's in a scene or whatever, he's not in very many scenes, but whenever he's in a scene, it's just, he raises the bar and lifts up the scene to a certain extent. He's kind of funny, and he's this guy. He's this character, and the way he's introduced is Bryce is, you know, hangs up her gun on the wall and takes off her clothes. And she's got, like, you know, a tank top and shorts on or whatever, but he comes up from behind her. She's looking at herself in the mirror, and he grabs her, and he's just like, you know, oh, I see you like guns. And he's like, what else do you like? And grabs on her boob from behind, and you haven't told me what else you like. And she's like, violence. Ugh! Elbows him, knocks him to the floor, and, like, puts the gun on him, and he's like, this character is so good, funny. Anyway, the next scene we just see him explaining, you know, what happened. We sat down on this moon here, and, you know, they've discovered, basically, again, it's in just a rip-off of Alien. They discovered, you know, all this stuff on this alien stuff on the planet or whatever that had all these canisters of, you know, like, life from all over the galaxy, like a child's butterfly collection, only some of these butterflies are not so friendly. And so basically it's another rip-off of Alien in the sense that there's, you know, in this movie there's a collection of alien life, I guess, from all over the galaxy that was been collected by presumably an alien race that, you know, is now since gone or whatever. And So the specimens that were captured and stored on this moon of Saturn or whatever the hell it is have been there for who knows how long, 2,000 centuries or whatever the line is from the movie. And it's just like, how could these things live for that long without being contained without eating or whatever. But it's a dumb sci-fi movie, it doesn't matter. So Klaus Kinski just does the story about them sitting down and discovering these canisters, and one of them was like broken or something like that, and they thought that the creature was in suspended animation, but it wasn't, and it got out. And he very loosely says that he very loosely says that it took over the crew from some kind of collective intelligence, quote unquote, or whatever. And it's just like, it's kind of cool the way he doesn't give everything away, because then we see it happen to the American crew, like the NTI spaceship or whatever, where it'll slowly happen. Where the premise of this movie is, yes, there is a creature like from the movie Alien to a certain extent, but the creature, the one thing I do like about this movie that actually does something different than Alien. Instead of just having the creature and the alien doing all the stuff, there's this, I don't know, I guess the creature, they don't really explain it, but basically the creature like has some kind of parasites or whatever that when victims die or whatever, they'll the creature will put a parasite onto a human, which will kind of bring them back to life and control, be kind of brain control or whatever. They don't explain why, the people can die and all of a sudden they come back to life, but that's, it doesn't matter, it's a dumb sci-fi movie. But that's one thing I actually do kind of like about this movie, is the hokey aspect of these people, like this French chick who died, comes back later being possessed by a parasite, and it's really kind of a cool, interesting scene where this John character is just suffering in his little room where he's got the big view and stuff, and there's all this lightning from, Titan, the moon they're on, just and, Susan comes up. Susan is the French chick with the bad hair, is just like, John, help me, and lures him outside. And I don't think she doesn't even have she's got the spacesuit but not the helmet on when she does that, so I don't understand why. Wouldn't he be like, how can she not have the spacesuit on or whatever? But whatever. Lures him outside, and this is the scene we actually do get to see her like topless and naked and stuff. And she's got a relatively decent body and stuff. And it's kind of it's one of the cooler scenes in the movie, really, where they're outside on this moon or whatever. So you're supposed to have a spacesuit on, and she takes it off, and like, I don't know why he's not a little more surprised, or he just seems to be like aroused and completely not thinking. Of course, I guess when men are horny or aroused or whatever, they're not necessarily, all the blood's going somewhere else. So I guess it's not uncommon for men to not really be very thoughtful or thinking at that moment. But when she takes off the spacesuit, she's just totally naked, topless, standing outside on the moon's the lunar surface or whatever, and she goes up to him to whatever, like she's gonna whatever, and she pulls off his helmet, and he's like, ah, of course, because if you're not a dead space Titan zombie, you need the helmet on to live and breathe on this when you're outside the ships and stuff. So that's kind of a cool scene. And he's like, oh, and falls down, and she, the guy's just like on his back going, oh, with no helmet on, and she, the character gets on top of him all naked and kisses him and stuff. And that scene is kind of cool. And then she'll get up and take this thing that looks like it looks like some bug, from planet Earth, just be like, like she's gonna, we don't really know as the viewer what that means at that point, but basically it means that she's putting a parasite on John, and he'll show up later on and, lure the people over to, I don't even know what ship, it seems like they go ship bouncing back and forth. I don't even know. I think John, because they're all in the American ship, so then John, video conference calls them from the Richter Dynamics ship, and he's like, come over here, there's all the air and everything you need over here. And it's so funny because the parasite's on this side of his face, so when he makes a video call, he's like got his face like this, and he's gotta hide the fact that there's a parasite, and it's just like, oh, I think I pinched a nerve in my neck. It's just, this is that scene, that video conference call where John, possessed by the parasite, John calls to lure the other people over to the other ship is one of the funniest scenes with him. It's just like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I think this movie is a lot better than it is. I don't know what it is about this movie that I enjoy in an aspect of just like being just it's just I laugh and just joyfully enjoy it like a kid in a candy store. It's just weird. So I think in the interest of keeping this review short as possible, I'm going to pretty much stop doing my beat-by-beat review at this point. I will simply say that the rest of this movie is that where it's kind of cool because the midpoint of this movie I like because it actually deviates from the movie Alien and does its own thing where it does this parasite possession of victims where you'll have Susan killed and shows up later to seduce John, to kill him, to turn him into a parasite, to lure the other people over to the ship. Klaus Kinski character gets killed and ends up being possessed by a parasite later on, and of course I don't think it's ever Klaus Kinski after he's possessed. I think it's just a double because as soon as he shows up, his character shows up, it's just like he's in a space helmet and lit from below, and all of a sudden his face kind of just deteriorates on camera. Like, we gotta deteriorate his face because it's going to be a double from here on out when he's possessed by the parasite or whatever. But what I like about the midway point of this movie is when characters start just showing up, like Susan and John and this Klaus Kinski character showing up possessed, and there's something really creepy, like genuinely creepy, I'm not even kidding, about maybe it's the kid in me being affected or whatever. Oh man, I wish I would have seen this when I was a kid because, then I'd be able to have seen it through a kid's eyes. And even though I kind of feel like every time I watch it, I do see it through a kid's eyes. But there's something really creepy about these people that are formerly like crew members that are in their spacesuits and they've got like either broken, visors and just possessed, like, or not, like just kind of ghoulish faces and stuff and attacking their own crew members and stuff. It's really ironic because, let's face it, this movie is a ripoff of Ridley Scott's Alien, and what's really weird, and I said it in my review of Prometheus when after I saw it when I was doing my review of it, that it's really weird because in that movie when stuff's hitting the fan and characters are being possessed and stuff by the black goo or whatever the hell it is, it reminded me of Creature. And it's just so weird how Creature is like a ripoff of Alien, and then it's almost like Prometheus ripped off elements of Creature, of like the possessed crew members and stuff running amok, and it was just like, oh my god. And that's one of the things I loved about Prometheus, is that it's just like that took that same thing from Creature that I think is so creepy, of the guys, the humans instead of having an alien in the movie, even though Creature does have an alien, it's got a creature, it's like the main protagonists, or antagonists rather, are basically the crew members that are possessed by the whatever you call it, the parasites, which is really a kind of a cool look. Like I say, when you've got crew members attacking crew members in spacesuits and with just ghoulish looking faces, and there is a little bit of extended stuff where the character of John, when he's possessed, they do a really cool thing because the nurse, he lures this nurse into a dark room, and then he attacks her, and then she grabs his face and like rips his nose and like lips off, and so from then on, he's like looking like that and all gnarly and nasty and bloody looking, and the way he's killed is his head is blown up by Ferris Bueller's Dad with a ray gun or a gun or whatever. And there's, I think in this extended DVD, you see it blow up and then you cut to someone, but then we cut back to seeing the slow-mo of like, and I don't think that that second shot is in the tape version or whatever. So I do like midway point through the movie when as I said, the possessed crew members are attacking their own crew and stuff. I think that is a really kind of a creepy thing from that aspect of, well, we all came here together, and now because we're possessed by parasites, we are the ones. The creature's just chilling in some dark, wet corner of some place in ship or whatever, and the creature is having the crew members do its dirty work for it, which is, something that, at least this movie does a little bit of its own thing. Even though this movie is, more or less just kind of bogus nonsense stuff and stuff like that, I do like the characters of Beth and Mike, the captain and his squeeze, if you will. There's a couple characters like with John and Susan, and then, the captain and this Beth chick, so there's a couple of relationships in the movie, but I do like the character, the actors and the actress that portray, the captain in this Beth character. I think that whenever we see them, together or doing or whatever, I think it kind of, in a way, makes, I think those two actors seem to be like the most serious, and I think I don't know if it was intended that way, to have these two characters be kind of the grounding force of the movie, and in really, being like two of the more competent actors in the movie, where, you've got all this just nonsense and goofy dialogue and all this goofy stuff going on around them, and they're kind of, not so goofy, and more or less the more competent actors in this piece. I mean, Klaus Kinski is too, but he's, just shows up for a brief amount of time. But I just wanted to say that, the characters of the captain and Beth, his squeeze or whatever, as goofy as this movie is, I do feel like their characters are done relatively well, and the performances by the people, are pretty good as well. So that's something I didn't want to forget to mention. One thing I forgot to mention is earlier in the movie, before the shit all hit the fan and stuff, when they're looking around through the alien artifacts and stuff like that, there looks to be like possibly a piece of the set, or either that or a redesigned piece of the set from the movie Forbidden Planet, with what was the name of those Krell, I think, the aliens from that planet, which we never see. We just see their creations that they created, but that kind of diamond or triangle doorway for the Krell thing, we see that very subtly in this movie Creature. And also, one thing I didn't notice until I watched this DVD version with the widescreen, I don't know if it was cut from the other version, or maybe because it was widescreen I could see it easier, I don't know, but it might be an actual prop from Forbidden Planet, with that thing that's got the four little things like this that they spun around in Forbidden Planet, and then he hit the thing and he spun it another way and hit the thing. It was like a way to get in the Krell, triangular door or whatever. It's like that actual prop from Forbidden Planet it's probably the actual prop that's in this movie, which is kind of interesting. I think the writer-director of this movie was like a sci-fi geek or whatever, so he probably had that original prop, and I don't know if he had that piece of the set with the triangular, doorway for the Krell, or if they manufactured that part for the movie just to, do a nod to since they had that prop. But I'm sure that prop thing, that lights up or whatever when he goes doot doot, he touches it and kind of pushes it up or whatever. I'm sure that's the actual prop from Forbidden Planet, I would imagine. So if that's the case, that's actually kind of cool. So when I was watching the DVD for the second time last night, it occurred to me that I was like, you know what, this movie's fun and this movie's goofy and stuff like that, but then it's like, I don't know, when it hits maybe the hour 10-minute mark or something like that, when the movie should be wrapping up for the grand finale, race to the climax or whatever, the movie seems to just do this inexplicable thing where it just like slows down for the rest of the movie, because you've got all the characters that are dead except for Beth and the captain, and then Ferris Bueller's dad are the last three humans, or the crew from the NTI that survive. And it's like when everyone else is dead, and John's head's blown up, and Klaus Kinski character's gone, and then inexplicably, like, Bryce just disappears halfway through the movie or whatever. So once it's just those three left, like, the remainder of the movie unfortunately isn't ridiculously interesting, and it's actually kind of slow. And just when, I don't know, traditionally you want to kind of really have the movie get better to keep, the audience's interest, it kind of does the opposite, where it just gets boring and quiet and slow, and where there's scenes where Beth is just creeping around in the darkness, looking around. It's almost like scenes of filler and stuff like that. So unfortunately, like the last, I don't know, maybe we could say the last fourth of this movie, in my opinion, is like the least interesting part of it, where it's just they're trying to lure the creature, and they figure out, she references a movie Thing from Another World, where they fried I think what they called, I don't know, there was some reference about a carrot in the movie, I can't really remember, but she says in Creature that they, fried a carrot from another planet with a electrical grid on the floor. I can remember some carrot reference in that movie, but I'm not exactly sure in what context it's used in the movie thing from another world, but that's how she refers to it in this movie. And at that point they decide to fry the creature with an electrical grid on the ground, and she wires it in or whatever, and they lure it in over into this one area where it's gonna send electricity through the ship to fry it or whatever, and it does. They do end up doing that successfully. And what's so funny is after they zap the alien, or the creature I should say, I should call it the creature, not the alien. After they zap the creature, it goes down, you know, presumably dead onto the ground or whatever. And it's so funny because the two guys just leave her alone in that dark room with the presumably dead creature. And it's just like, doesn't, you know, she's okay with that, and she's not only, you know, apparently because she's not only okay with being in that dark, scary room with the, you know, creature corpse or whatever, but she goes over to it and like kicks it. And at this point you're just like, yeah, well, I mean, you know, this is one of the parts of the movie, it's just like, whatever. And of course she kicks it, I don't know if she kicks it twice, but second time's like, I think it grabs her foot or something, and she's like, and it basically, you know, what it does, what the creature does with humans, I guess, it hangs them upside down and maybe, you know, eats them, you know, bits and parts at a time when it's hungry or whatever. You know, it hangs up this Beth character to presumably to snack on later on or whatever, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And then the guys have to rescue her, and this one, Ferris Bueller's dad, ends up finding this bomb. I think the last part of this movie I think takes place on the Richter Dynamics ship. And so the bomb's there. The Klaus Kinski character talked about the bomb, I think. Blow it back to hell. I've got enough explosives to blow it back to hell on my ship. Ferris Bueller's dad ends up finding the bomb, and you know, this is just like I say, the last fourth of this movie is just so boring, just like the boringest part of the whole movie, where it's like trying to, you know, lure the creature. So I don't know, Davidson, which is the captain, Mike Davidson, ends up coming down into this room where he sees that the creature's sitting on this, you know, this whatever they call it, a net thing or whatever that Ferris Bueller's dad had put down, and he's basically just sitting on that, slowly feeding on Ferris Bueller's dad, and he's like, you know, he's got the bomb on him, and he's like, his arm, and he's like, do it. He's pointing at the, you know, the lever or whatever, because they're on like a trap door or whatever, pointing at the Davidson, you know, Captain Davidson, to pull the lever so they'll fall down into the, you know, out of the ship onto the surface of the moon or whatever. And it's so funny when you see characters when they've got blood coming out of their mouth, because you can see in one instance where it's like, you know, you can see them force the blood out of their mouth or whatever actors have to do to try to, you know, get the blood to come out or whatever. And, you know, he does it, and sending the creature and Ferris Bueller's dad onto the surface, and then the creature's like, ends up at the front, I was going to say front door, but at the opening, this door that's open of the ship, and it's just like, you know, it's, what's so ridiculous is there's no like decompression or whatever, you know, normally, you know, when you're in a ship in space or whatever, and you open the door, it's just like, but I think from what I can see, like the creature's outside, and you know, the door of the spaceship's just open, but it doesn't matter, and the creature's just sitting there with the net around him and the bomb hanging from him, and I think it's counting down like the longest 30 seconds you've ever experienced in your life, and the captain just shoots at him, and the creature's like in the doorway, like, and it doesn't really faze him, and the captain's so pissed he jumps at it and like kicks it, you know, and you know, kicks it away from the door so that way the creature falls out there, and then meanwhile the captain's outside with no spacesuit, no helmet, no nothing. We see the you know, the timer count down to 0, and he's like, oh, another fake thing that happens in the movie is just a little anticlimactic, is the creature grabbed the captain off the ground and pick him up, and they're both standing up, and the creature's like choking him, like, oh my gosh, it's a little laughable, but you know, in a good way or whatever, and it's just like, oh my gosh, and the captain looks down and sees the thing go from like 2, 1 to 0, and it's like, it didn't go off, like you want it to go off when you're right there anyway, you probably should be glad it didn't go off, and I don't know, somehow he ends up away from the creature. Oh, the creature throws him onto the ground, lunar surface, and he's like, it didn't go off, because he's like on the lunar surface with no helmet or spacesuit, and then Bryce comes out of nowhere, and she's like, yes it did, and points her gun and shoots the bomb that's attached to the creature to blow up the creature. And it's so funny how Captain Davidson can frickin' survive out on the lunar surface with no frickin' spacesuit. But again, it's just hocus pocus, you know, Bologna movie, and it's just like, oh gosh. So all's well that ends well. Turns out Bryce, she like disappeared halfway through the movie. Turns out she got lost by, it's her own words, by the way. She got lost, so that's where she was for the remainder of the movie until she was needed. The moment that she was needed, the character got lost, was lost for half of the movie. She comes back. So there's 3 survivors. You've got, you know, Captain Davidson, Cutie Pie, Beth Chick, and then Bryce, who all happily ever after take the, you know, the Richter Dynamics ship, presumably back to Earth or whatever. I'm going to be able to go as high as a whopping 2 3/4 stars out of 4 stars for Creature. It's a movie, except for maybe the last fourth of it, that I think is just, I don't know, it's just like, you can tell that it's, if it isn't, it seems like it's made by just a sci-fi geek that absolutely loves like good sci-fi movies, and he tried his best to do his own or whatever, heavily ripping off one of them mainly, and adding a little bit of his own stuff to it. I don't know if I haven't seen obviously every sci-fi movie ever made, so possibly he was ripping off the elements of, you know, the possessed, you know, crew members attacking their own crew members from another movie. Who knows? But at least you can't say that that element was, you know, ripped off from Alien or whatever. Now on to my brief, you know, review of this DVD that I got for, I think, $5.99 on Amazon. It's really a weird DVD because it's got like no like studio or anything like that. It could be like unauthorized, that someone's just making themselves. I say that because it is a DVD-R with some, basically a paper label just, you know, taped to the disc. It even says DVD-R. Very, very, yeah, it's really small, but you need good eyes to see it. So I don't know if this is even authorized or if it's just some bootlegger who's selling these right now, but either way, I mean, for $6 to be able to, it's well worth it for me to be able to see, you know, finally this movie widescreen, and not only just widescreen, but you know, with some additional footage and stuff, was really interesting and fun. And strangely enough, there's at least 2 lines that were trimmed that were in the tape version that aren't in this one, which is kind of weird. I don't know if it's lines that the director, in hindsight, when this was made or whatever, decided to take out. But there's a couple trims that aren't in this version that are in the tape version, which is really ironic. One would hope that this would be the most complete and fullest version, but the 2 brief line trims are in regards to when John calls them with the video conferencing after he's possessed, and John Davidson, or not John Davidson, the Captain Davidson rather, is like, okay, you know, and the original line from the tape is, well, think about it. And then John says, well, don't take too long, I want to go home. And in this version, it's just like, the Captain's like, okay. And then it cuts to John, well, don't think too long, I want to go home, which kind of makes no sense, or not don't think too long. He says, don't take too long, I want to go home, which kind of doesn't make sense in this version, because, you know, it makes more sense if the Captain says, okay, we'll think about it. And then John says, well, don't take too long. And this one he says, okay, and then John says, well, don't take too long, which I guess could still make sense. The other trimmed line is in the, you know, after they go back to, John lures them to the ship, and John's just seemingly forgotten about Susan, and the Captain's like, you know, the Ferris Bueller's dad is like, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't know. And originally in the tape version, he's like, it just seems like you forgot about Susan. And in this version, it's just, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't know. And the guy's, Ferris Bueller's dad, is like, well, let's go do this or that or whatever. So they cut that out. So they cut out at least 2 lines from the tape version that's on this version, which is a little bit of a bummer, but life, you know, life goes on without those 2 little lines, I guess, or whatever. Who knows? There could be more that's cut, I don't know. Those are 2 lines that I noticed. Maybe that's it, maybe there's more, I don't know. But another really cool thing about this is, you know, it's widescreen, of course, and it's 1:8:5. It's anamorphic, so on your widescreen HGTV, you know, it'll have, it's, you know, it'll be the correct ratio with the black bars on top and bottom because it's Panavision and stuff. And you know, for the most part, it looks really good. One of my complaints with it, as far as how it looks, is it's, at least on the screens that I've looked at it on, it's kind of on the darker side, which is kind of a bummer. But for $6 and being able to see a relatively decent version of it in widescreen, and also one thing that's really cool about it is the tape does say it's stereo. I don't know, I probably didn't even watch the tape in stereo ever, but the DVD rather, this DVD is in nice sounding stereo and stuff with the music and sound effects and stuff. So for $6, I mean, you know, I would recommend this if you're a fan of this movie, or even if my review has sold you on this movie. Like I say, there's no special features, it's just the movie. There are some reviews on Amazon that complain about this DVD, because it's a DVD-R, probably not necessarily working and skipping every now and then and just skipping the whole movie. I like to think that because mine worked fine, that they've since fixed it or whatever, but just buyer beware, I guess. But I would definitely, especially for the $6 price tag, definitely recommend this for anyone who's a fan of this movie, to finally be able to own it in a widescreen version with actually extended scenes. Is really a treat for this Creature fan. I guess that'll pretty much do it for my Creature movies / I guess brief DVD review. Like I say, I think there was some version that they put out which is like goes for a lot of money, they say, that includes special features as well. I'm not well versed in all the versions of this movie that came out, so I don't really know about that. All I know is I was really happy to be able to find this for, you know, widescreen and uncut version for $6. So thank you very much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video. This creature is sly. Yeah. I took the liberty of checking your air supply. There's no air. It's the Zusammenfarm Lebensgersten. Yeah, this is the Zusammenfarm Lebensgersten. It's like someone took this collection of life from all over the galaxy, like a child's butterfly collection. Except some of these butterflies are not so friendly.